Hey there and welcome to Photoshop 301, Section 3, the pen tool and paths. In this section, we're going to show you everything you need to know about using the pen tool in Photoshop. Now, the pen tool is one of my favorite tools in Photoshop because it allows me to make really accurate selections. For instance, if you want to cut your subject out from your background, there really is no better tool to use than the pen tool. Now, it does take a little bit of getting used to. So in this section, we're going to show you everything you need to know to actually use the tool. And then go ahead and practice using it just a little bit on your own, and then you're going to start to see how useful the pen tool can be in Photoshop. All right, guys, let's go ahead and jump into Photoshop. So we're going to start off by opening our image for this section. We're going to hit Control-Command-O. Okay, we'll go to Section 3, Pen Tool, here in our Images folder, and we have o3pen.tiff. Let's go ahead and open this up, and I'm going to hit F for full screen. All right, this is one of my favorite images from the series. We actually built out this big U-shaped thing here and had our subject inside of it. So we've already done a little bit of retouching here. Our goal in this section, we're going to show you how to use the pen tool, and then we're going to show you how to cut our subject out of the background to reveal this background behind our subject. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into our pen tool. We're going to hit P for our pen tool, or we can simply click right here and hold, and you can see we have a few different options here listed within the pen tool. Okay. Now, when we're creating pen paths, those are stored over here where we see paths. Now, if you don't see the paths, just go to Window and down here to Paths. Make sure it's got a checkbox next to it, and it'll show up. All right, let's go ahead and start off with our default. So we're going to grab our pen tool, and you're going to see as I start to make a pen path, basically, anytime you start clicking with the pen tool, it's going to create what's called a work path. So you can see it there. All right, now in this case, I'm just going to click a couple of times with the pen tool, okay, and we're going to see this is our work path that we're creating. So a work path is basically any path that's currently in progress. Now, paths are a lot like layers. So layers, you have a bunch of different layers and you can work with each of those separate. Paths are really similar. So in this case, let's say this is a path that we want to go ahead and save. We want that path to stay there, and then we can create a new path and continue working from there. So let's go ahead and double click where it says work path. Okay, and I'm just going to type in the number 1 and hit OK. So that's going to be saved as path number 1. Now I can unclick from path number 1, and then we don't see our paths. All right, now let's say I want to create a new path. So this time I'm going to go ahead and click on my new path icon. Here we see we have path number 1. All right, let's go ahead and zoom in. And this time, instead of just clicking, I'm going to click and drag. So the pen tool works by basically making curves. So if I click and drag in this direction, okay, we have two control arms, and these basically dictate the direction of my curve. So if I click here and drag in this direction, you can see this is our pen path, okay? And this control arm and that control arm are pulling this path in that direction. So now we can see we have another control arm that's out this way, right? So if I click here, I can predict that this control arm is going to pull my pen path in that direction. Okay, this is doing the same, and then now we have another one setting us up, okay, to be pulling out in that direction. So if I click over here, I can predict that it's going to be pulling me out in that direction. So click over there, and we can see it does indeed pull out in that direction. Okay, now that's basically the idea with a pen path. You basically just click and drag in different areas and create what are called paths. Now, what do you actually use these pen paths for? Well, they're very useful for creating selections as well as masks that you can use for cutting your subject out of their background. Or you can create really any shape that you want. For instance, if you're trying to do a custom logo, you can totally design a custom logo using just the pen tool and paths. So as a photographer, most of the time you're going to be using a pen tool for creating paths for things like cutting out your subject. So that's what we're going to be focusing in this tutorial. Now let's take a look at some of the options within our pen path. So we're using our pen path here. You can see, again, we can go to our paths. We can click on either one of our paths that we just created. Okay, let's go ahead and click off there. Now, up here at the very top, our first option, we can choose to create a regular path or a shape. Now, a shape basically just fills your path in with a color, and it allows you to add a stroke as well. So let's go to shape. We're going to create a shape here. You're going to see it's going to fill it with black, and it's going to give us a stroke. Let's go ahead and have it be, we can click on any color we want. In this case, we'll just have it be white. Okay, and it's going to be a 3-point stroke. Okay, so now as I start to create a path, there we go, instead of just being a blank path, it's going to start to fill in, there we go, wherever I paint, wherever my pen path goes with our shape. Let's go ahead and end it by clicking here on our original point. You're going to see a little O next to your pen tool. Click there, and that's going to go ahead and close out your shape. So a pen path and a shape basically work the same way. A shape just fills in a path. Now, one of the key benefits of using paths in Photoshop is you can edit them at any point in time. So let's go ahead and show you how to edit an existing path. Okay, now as long as you can see all your points here on your path, you can edit it. Now, let's say you don't see your points. Let's say I'm clicked out here, okay? I want to get back to the place where I can edit my points, because if I use my move tool, I can click and move my shape around here, but I can't, you can see, I can't get to my original points. So to get back and actually edit your original pen path, first you need to be selected on the pen tool. So let's click here on our pen tool, okay? Now, when you're selected on your pen tool, we need to hold Control or Command to bring up our direct selection tool. So Control or Command brings up this white arrow. Now, as long as that white arrow is on, you can then click on your shape. We can see activated our path. I'm going to click on our shape one more time, and again, I'm holding Control or Command, and now we can see our actual pen path here, and it's ready to be edited. So as long as you can see all these little points, you're ready to edit your pen path. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to hold Control or Command and click on this point and bring it out. There we go. And we can see as I do this, it updates my shape in real time. And this is the real benefit of using the pen tool, is that you can change your path or your shape at any point in time. Now, in this case, I'm just clicking right here on each of these points. Now, I can also click on a control arm, and I can change how these curves work. I can click right here on a curve, and I've got Control or Command held down this entire time, by the way, okay? So I can click on one of these points and start bringing these out. There we go. And you're going to notice that as I do this, the entire time we're maintaining, there we go, we're maintaining smooth curves. So the pen tool is always going to default to try to create smooth curves. No matter what you do, it's not going to create angles unless you tell it to create angles. All right, so how do you tell your pen tool to start creating angles? Well, this whole time we've been holding Control or Command. So anytime you see that white arrow here, that's Control or Command. Okay? Now I'm going to let go of that. Now I'm going to hold Alt or Option. Okay? And we can see now I have what looks like an upside down V. Let's just move to this point so you guys can see that. We've got like an upside down V. Now that's the keyboard shortcut here for our Convert Anchor Point tool. So if you don't like using keyboard shortcuts, you can simply go to Convert Anchor Point tool. So let's go there. So your Convert Anchor Point tool, you can click here. There we go. And now you're going to see what was, there we go. Let's go ahead and click a couple of times. What was basically just a couple of rounded areas now, I'm basically telling this all to become hard angles. Now, with the same tool, if I click and drag on these guys, then I can go ahead and define them as curves again. Okay, so let's go ahead and pull all these out. We can redefine them as curves. There we go. And there we go. I can also click on one side. So if I click on just one side, now we can have a point. So it's going to curve into this point and then curve back out. In this case, it's going to do the same. Oh, let's go ahead and click here. Going to curve into this point. There we go. And curve back out. So you can create simple points just by clicking. And if you click and drag, it's going to drag out to curves again. There we go. And to create points with curves on either side, simply click one of the control arms and bring it out. And again, I usually don't go to all these different tools because they're all everything except the freeform pen tool, they're accessible through keyboard shortcuts. So let's go back to our pen tool here. And again, I can hold Alt or Option and get the same thing. So as I hold Alt or Option, you're going to see it converts to the Convert Anchor Point tool. There we go. And I can do all the same thing here now with the pen tool. Okay, now in this case, we're working with all of our existing points that we created. And you can see it, the shape looks very different from when we started. All right, let's go ahead and convert this one out as well. Now, let's say we want to go ahead and subtract out a couple of points. We want to make this a little bit more simple. Well, all I have to do is hover over an existing point. Okay, we're not holding Control or Command anything that right now. We see a little minus next to my pen path, so just click there, and it's going to minus that point out. If I click there, now we're minus that point out. Okay, and here we go. Now we're getting really simple, back to just 1 point. Let's just hit undo a couple times so we have, there we go, a little bit more of a shape. So if we just hover over and click, that is the subtract point tool, which is right over here. You can see this is the delete anchor point tool. Now to add an anchor point, all we have to do is hover over our pen path. There we go. We'll see a little plus there, and we can click there and add. So if we want to click and add an anchor point and then move it, then we hold Control or Command, go back to our direct selection, click here, and then move that out in that direction. All right, so we can see there are a ton of different options within the pen tool, and a lot of control that you can have within using your pen tool. Okay, so up until now, we've used basically our pen tool as a path or a shape. This is our shape here. Okay, now a shape is defined right over here basically as a shape layer. Okay, we also have a path here. We have our shape 1 shape path, which defines the edge of our shape. Okay, now we can still do things like turn this into a selection. If I right click here on my shape 1 shape path, okay, I can go to make selection. I can choose to feather the radius of that selection. Let's just not feather it there. All right, and then for instance on a new layer, I can grab my brush tool and I can paint with the large soft edge brush and do something like this. There we go. That looks pretty nice. Something like that. That looks pretty good. Deselect, and now I can move this around. Okay? So a pen path or a shape path can be turned into a selection at any point in time. And once it's a selection, you can do whatever you want with it in Photoshop. You can fill it in with colors and layers and textures on a new layer, or you can use that as a layer mask for any existing layer. All right, let's go ahead and jump in and look at a few more of our options within the pen tool. Let's go ahead and make these two invisible for now. Now, we're going to go back to our pen tool. Okay, let's go ahead and click here on path. So when I start working with my path, it's going to create a new path. Let's go ahead back to our path here, and I start painting around here. Now we're going to see it starts creating a work path. Now, because I didn't create a new path before I started working with my path, it just automatically calls it a work path. We can save this at any time by double clicking there. Okay? If you want to just tell it to create a new path, you can always click on the new path icon. Okay, so we've looked at creating a path versus a shape. Now, at any point in time, we can turn our current path. Let's just do that. We can turn that into a selection by clicking here. There we go. All right, let's go ahead and undo that. So we can also turn this as a mask. So if we click there and turn this into a mask, we can see this becomes what's called a vector mask. All right. Now, here's how a vector mask works. Basically, let's go ahead and create a new layer here. All right. And on our new layer, we're going to just use our brush tool. There we go. And create a really simple shape. Okay. Now with our pen tool, let's go ahead and create a new path here. We're going to create a simple path. There we go. Something like that. All right. And then on our layer, we're going to go ahead and click on mask. And this becomes what's called a vector mask. So you can see right over here, anything that's gray with a little white area in here, that's called a vector mask. And if you right click on it, you can see it says disable vector mask, delete, or rasterize vector mask. Okay, so that's how you know you have a vector mask. Now, a vector mask works basically just like a layer mask, but instead of using pixels like black and white to define where a layer is going to be visible, it uses a pen path. So you can make any layer visible by using a pen path. Okay, so this is really nice because you can change this and edit it at any point in time. Again, if I'm on my pen tool, Control or Command to activate my path, and now I can start to move my pen path around. All right, and because this path is defining a vector mask, it's also defining where is going to be visible on my current layer. And we're actually going to be using a vector mask to cut our subject out in just a little bit. All right, pretty cool, huh? You're already like dang, the pen tool is so cool. You can do all this stuff with it. It is really, really cool. Because again, these shapes can be changed at any point in time. All right, let's go ahead and click off there. Now, we're going to create a new path here. Okay, we've seen selection, we've seen create as a mask, and we've seen turning it into a shape. If you start a pen path as a regular path there, you can always click on shape and it'll turn it into a shape as well. So you don't have to start off with shape if you don't want to. All right, let's go ahead and undo that. Next, we have a few different options for how our paths are going to actually combine. So if we have a couple of different paths, we can combine them. We can subtract the front shape, intersect the shape areas, and exclude overlapping shapes as well. Okay, so here we go. We can start to bring that back around. There we go. And let's go ahead and click on, there we go, our path. And as I start to click on here, well, this doesn't, I need to make this into a shape layer first. All right, cool. So now we have a few different options for our shape layer. You can see we can click between subtract from our shapes. All right, we can combine the different shapes, intersect the shapes, and exclude overlapping shapes. So I recommend just keeping this at exclude overlapping shapes. All right, next we have our alignments. You can align these to an entire area, like you can align to your canvas, for instance. So we can make this align center on our canvas. There we go. On our vertical edges, we can have this be a bottom edge and over here to the bottom right. You can also align to selections. So if I go ahead and make a selection here, okay, I'm going to go to my pen path. I'm going to hold Control or Command and go ahead and activate it. I mean, we're clicking on our pen path itself. Okay, now we can go here and have it say align to our selection. And then we can make sure we go ahead and select it. There we are. And we can have it aligned to the vertical edges of our selection. There we go. And the horizontal selection edge of our selection as well. All right. And then we can bring our shape forward and backward. If we have multiple shapes within a single layer, we can bring them forward and bring them backward. Now in this case, we only have one, so it doesn't really do anything, but we can have them overlap each other. All right. And the final one we're going to look at here is once I start creating my pen path, let's go ahead and create a new, here we go. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and make these invisible. If I create a new path, there we go. As I create my path here, we have one more option, and this is for our rubber band. And this is basically going to give me a preview of what my control point is going to do. So as I click and drag around my rubber band, as I click and drag the rubber band option, it's going to see what the control point is actually going to do. So if you guys are first starting off with the pen tool, this is a really great option for you because it'll give you a little bit of an idea of what to predict when you're using your pen tool. All right, great. So those are our basic options within the pen tool. Now we'll show you some of the options that you can do with a pen path. So let's start off by clicking on one of our paths. Let's go ahead and click on path 4. In this case, it doesn't really matter. We're just using this as examples. All right, so path 4 here, our first option for our paths, we're going to click on our fill with our foreground color. Okay, now this is a newer option actually to Photoshop CC 2015, but basically it's just going to create a new layer for you and go ahead and fill that path with your foreground color. All right, let's go back to our paths and hit undo there. Okay, next we have our stroke path. Now this is actually going to stroke your path with your current brush, which is really cool. So if I hit B for my brush tool, you can see that that's basically is what my current brush looks like. Well, let's go ahead and change our current brush a little bit. I'm going to right click here. We're going to bring our softness down to 0. All right, there we go. That's what our brush is going to look like. And let's go ahead and click on a new layer there. Now, if we want to go ahead and stroke that, so if we use this button right down here, it's going to stroke path with brush. Instead, if I right click here and I say to stroke this path, now we have a few more options. I can choose my brush tool or any of these tools, for instance. And if I clicked on my brush tool, I can actually have this option which says simulate pressure, which is really cool. This is going to have it start off small and then go large and then end up small again. So let's hit OK there. And now we can see, let's click off our path. Now we have basically a pen path that simulates the pressure as though I did that with one brush stroke. So if you don't have a pressure sensitive tablet and you want to make like a signature for something, you can make it with a pen path and then have it simulate the pressure along that pen path, which is really cool. You can also do all kinds of other things. Like in this case, I actually have this brush, which is like butterflies. So I can right click here. I can go to stroke path. All right. And we're going to stroke it with our current brush. And here you can see I've got butterflies stroked along our current path. So you can do all kinds of cool things with your brush tool as well. All right, let's go ahead and switch right back to a normal brush. All right, next we have our option to turn our path, load path as a selection. So it's going to simply load that as a selection. And then once it's a selection, you can use this as a layer mask. All right, let's go ahead and undo that. You can also load this as a selection simply by holding Control or Command and clicking here on your pen path. Okay, you can also click when you're on your pen tool on your selection. There we go. And that'll turn it into a path as well. All right, so a couple different ways to make a pen path into a selection. All right, now our next option actually works the exact opposite. So let's go ahead and on our new layer, this time what we're going to do is I'm going to create a lasso selection. There we go. Let's say this is our really nice lasso selection. Now we have a selection. If I go over to my paths, we can actually click on this tool here, which will actually make a work path from our selection. So you can start off with the selection and turn that into a path. So if I click here, now we can see we have a work path, and our selection just became a path, which is really cool. So you can go from path to a selection and selection back to a path. All right, very cool. Now you can click here to create a mask. So again, if you have for instance, if you're on a layer, let's go ahead and create a new layer. Again, we're going to use a very similar example to what we did earlier. There we go, our new layer. And we'll go ahead and click on one of these paths there. Let's go ahead and click on that one. We can load this. First time you click on this button, it's going to go ahead and create a layer mask. Okay, so you can see it just created a layer mask. Now, if I click here one more time, it's going to create a vector mask on this layer. So here's my vector mask, and we can get back to it at any point in time by holding Control or Command. Once we're clicked on our pen tool, there we go, and we can change this at any point in time. Okay, that's not the fastest way to create a vector mask. All right, the fastest way to do it is just to use this mask up there, but it is an option for you there. And then we have the new mask, and we have our delete mask as well. All right, so it's nice to know that no matter what you're doing here within your layers, you still have all these paths that are stored, and you can get back to them at any point in time. All right, guys, so we've gone over quite a bit when it comes to actually using our paths and our selections within Photoshop. Now let's go ahead and show you guys how to actually use this path to cut out our subject. So you can cut your subject out in a couple of different ways using a pen path. You can use a normal path, convert that into a selection, and then load that as a layer mask, or you can simply use a path as a vector mask. All right, let's go ahead and show you how to use a path as a vector mask. Okay, so let's go ahead and click on our path tool. Now, we're going to click on our layer here, and we're going to start off, there we go, by basically tracing around the area that we want to keep with our subject. All right, in this case, we're going to start here. We're going to click up in this area. There we go. And basically, I'm clicking and dragging around my subject. Anytime I have a hard point, I can simply click. All right, and I'm kind of going to purposely do some areas that are not perfect here. There we go. So we can get an idea of why we can use a vector mask. There we go. To edit, well, we're going to use a vector mask because it's going to allow us to edit our path at any point in time. All right, click and drag there, hold Alt or Option and bring it up there. Now I still have rubber band selected, so that's going to give me a little preview of where I'm actually going to be going with my pen tool, which can be really helpful. All right, and there we go. Let's bring that down there and right to about there. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on Mask, and it's going to start masking out our subject. Now as I continue to go around, all right, we're going to see I'm going to continue to work on masking out our subject. So in this case, I want to actually see my subject again. So I can right click here and I can click on Disable Vector Mask. Okay, get back to my pen path. Let's go back to our path here, our work path. There we go. And I want to go back to start editing my path again. So hit P for the pen tool. All right, And now I want to go back to my original point, and you're going to see a little square there. All right, right next to our cursor. And that's how we can get back to our original path. All right, so we're going to continue editing here. There we go. Basically just tracing around our subject. All right. Click and drag to create smooth lines. All right, and then Alt or Option whenever you get to a corner. All right. Now, when you cut your subject out of their background, you don't have to do a perfect job. Sometimes I'll even leave out like little bumps and things like that, because it'll just help to kind of like simplify the shape of your subject. All right, there we go. Click and drag that out. Now again, we have a point, right? I don't want to continue drawing over here because it's going to cut her finger off. So hold Alt or Option, grab that point, and bring it up there. Okay, and there we have a better selection. Again, Alt or Option. I'm going to click and drag there. There we go. And fingers are always the trickiest part. All right. Should move pretty quick after this. There we go. And we're going to click and drag there. And zoom out a little bit so we can get this entire area. See if we can do this with one curve. If you can't, it's not a big deal. Remember, because we're creating a vector path here, I can always edit this at any point in time. Okay? And in this case, I'm doing this relatively quickly. You would probably want to spend a little bit more time on this. There we go, for your own projects. I'm just trying to get you the idea of how this actually works here. All right. So clicking around our subject, there we go. So you can see, it's really not too difficult to do. Basically, you're just selecting out your subject. Now, in this case, our subject actually is photographed against like a pretty simple background. It's a really simple background. So you could use other tools. Like, for instance, you might be thinking, well, can't I just use like the magic wand tool and select out the background here? And you totally can. Now, the pen tool really shines in areas where, like, for instance, you photograph someone against like a forest and you wanted to cut them out of their background. You could use this exact same technique to cut them out of that background as well. So whether you have a simple background or a complicated background, the pen tool is going to do a great job. All right, click and drag there. There we go. Alt or Option because we come to a corner. There we go. Click and drag there. All right. Cool. And I'm going to cut those little things off there because they're just kind of like little straps that don't need to be there. All right. Cool. So if you guys can follow along with this and you feel comfortable using the pen tool, then you are really far along to doing advanced operations within Photoshop. Because being able to cut out your subject well gives you a huge, huge advantage to doing things like compositing, special effects, and even just in this case, what we're doing is cleaning up our background by cutting our subject out. All right. Click there and drag out. All right. And we're almost done, guys. All right, let's drag this up. We'll include that little strap there. Seems like it's necessary. Just click a few times. All right, drag down in that direction, out in that direction. We can kind of come down here. So all this is going to be kept, and we'll go all the way back to our original point. Okay, cool. So you can see basically we just cut our subject out of our background. So let's go back to our subject. Okay, now she already has a work path here. All right, now in this case, this is the work path that's defining our subject. So let's go ahead and delete that real quick. Okay, delete our work path. Now let's go back to our work path we were just working on. All right, there we go. And now here on our layer, we can go ahead and click on mask, and that's going to go ahead and cut our subject out of the background, which is pretty cool. Now we do have an area here right in the middle. So we want to click on, let's make sure we're on our same path here, subject vector mask. Okay, I'm going to click here. There we go. All right, and add to this point. We're going to bring it out in this direction so it knows, hey, this is the area you're supposed to be cutting out, not the other area. All right, and let's go ahead and bring that out there as well. All right, so here we have our subject cut out from her background. And you can see it really is very good. We can go in here and actually further refine our selection at any time. Let's hold down Shift and click let's hold down Shift and click on our vector mask, just to kind of see the before and the after there. Okay, now in this case, we actually do want to keep the area around our subject as well. So this is using a vector mask. Now that's going to cut out exactly what you select out, basically exactly what you cut out in Photoshop. So let's show you guys how to use that exact same pen path, and then here we can actually use it as a selection, and then use that selection as a layer mask. Okay guys, now before we delete our vector mask and use it as a regular mask, let's go ahead and zoom in here so we can see here's the edge of our subject. Okay, now we do have a few options even with our vector mask. So let's click on our vector mask, go to Window and down to Properties, and here we can actually feather the edge of a vector mask. So if I want our edge to be just a little bit softer, we can do that with our feathering here with our vector mask. So maybe just a little bit softer, and there we have a little bit more of a natural edge. Now in this case, I want to include, like, our subject really is cut out very nicely, but I want to include other areas as well. So I'd like to be able to use selections here. Okay, so what we're going to do, I'm going to click on our vector mask, and we're going to go ahead and delete that. Okay, there we go. Now the same path, we're just going to hit Control or Command and click on our path. All right, now we're going to go ahead and click on our layer mask. All right, let's make a regular layer mask. So you can see this is a regular layer mask. Now, if you're confused, a vector mask will always show up gray like this. And if you right click on it, it'll say things like disable vector mask, delete, and rasterize. Okay, a layer mask will always say disable layer mask, delete, things like that. Okay, so by default, we basically see the same exact thing. Now, in this case, we need to cut out this area inside of there as well. So let's go ahead and do that. We can do that with our pen tool. Just click here. All right, make that a selection real quick. Alt or Option when we come to a corner. There we go. All right, that looks great. Now, when we created this little area, we can simply right click and go down to Make Selection. All right, in this case, we're going to feather it by 0 pixels. So let's hit OK. Okay, and then here on our layer mask, remember, a layer mask, you just paint white or black to control visibility. Okay, so let's hit Shift Delete, and we want to fill that with black. There we go. And that area is going to be invisible right there. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and hold Shift and click on our mask here again, because I want to go ahead and mask in our backdrop. And this is really easy to do. So again, we're going to hit P for the pen tool. I'm going to click right up there. All right. Down here, we're basically going to go in and outline our edge here. All right, let's bring that down just a little bit. There we go. Click there and straight up. Very nice. So I'm basically just telling it this area as well. I want to make sure we're keeping that. Okay, so I went ahead and defined my subject with one path. There we go. Let's go ahead and end that path there. I went ahead and defined my subject with one path. Now I'm creating another path to define my background, which I can turn this into a selection easily as well. Simply right click here and go down to Make Selection and hit OK. All right, now here on this same layer mask, all I have to do is click on my layer mask and hit Shift Delete, and we're going to fill that with white on our layer mask, making that completely visible. All right, there we go. And now our subject is cut out of our mask. There we go. Our subject's cut out of the background as well as our background. Now, in this case, we do have a little bit of overlap here, which is not a big deal at all. We'll just use our pen tool. There we go, just to make a quick selection right over here. All right, let's right click, go to Make Selection, and then here on my layer mask, I'm going to hit Shift Delete, which is our keyboard shortcut for our fill dialog. And we're going to fill that with white as well. All right, now you see we have basically a perfect selection of our subject. Look how well she's cut out. I mean, it really does a great job. And not only that, but the edge, the fidelity of our edge is exactly the same throughout our image. All right, Alt or Option, and let's click back on our subject. And there we have it, guys. Our subject is perfectly cut out from her backdrop. So now, here in our backdrop, we can do things like move the yellow up, or hit Control or Command T, flip this around. We can do all kinds of really interesting things to our background because our subject is completely cut out. We don't have to worry at all about any type of overlap. All right, guys, and that's how to use the pen tool and pen paths within Photoshop. I hope you enjoyed this section. The pen tool is one of my favorites in Photoshop. Be sure to practice it. You can use it to cut things out of their background or create unique shapes and graphics and logos and things like that. All right, guys, thanks so much. We'll see you in the next section. Bye, everyone.